Continuing on Masechet Berachot, and we are holding on Taf Lamed Tet Amud Bet, 8 lines from the bottom. The limud of Amud Yomi for Polish Kislev has been dedicated by Aaron and Miriam Zaguri, the Ilui Nishmat Edith Bat Miriam, that actually today, I believe is her Yortzeit, and Shlomo should have an Aliyah. Amen. So says the Gemara, we are amidst a discussion of the bracha of a full loaf of bread versus something that is broken to smaller piece. The larger piece is the broken one, and the whole one is smaller. And we went back and forth. And the Gemara said that Rab Shalman had this idea of putting them together and making the bracha on both. And this way, based on Rashi, you either are taking a piece from both of them, or you're only taking a piece from the top one, from the whole, the shalem. Going to Tosafot, it looks like you're taking from both of them, and so on. Now the Gemara discusses that when it comes to Pesach, you have a reason actually. You actually have a reason to do from a whole together with a broken one, because you have a concept of lechem mishneh because it's Yom Tov. So you definitely want to have something shalem, but you also have a concept of lechem oni, which means bread of a poor man. And that's the reason up to today, we do yachatz, right? Kaddish Ruchas Karpas Yachas. When you do Yachas, is to end up with a broken piece, because you want to commemorate, you want to remember the fact that our forefathers, never had an eved, a slave never has a full loaf of bread. They had slavery to deal with, and therefore we break the bread. We don't want it to be shalem. So it says, on that note, the Gemara says, Amar Abba, Amar Papa rather, Hakol Modim bePesach shemaniach perusa betoch shlema. Everybody agrees and today's this week's learning has been also dedicated of the Leilui Nishmat Rachamim ben Yosef Moshe, which today is his Yortzeit by our very own Mayar Zagari. The neshama should have an aliyah. It was a tremendous personality. Bezat Hashem should be an aliyah for his neshama. So Rav Papa Amar, Hakol modim bePesach shemaniach perusa betoch shlema uboseya. On Pesach, nobody disagrees that you need to have a shlema and together with it a perusa, a whole matzah and also a broken matzah. My tama, what's the reason? Because lechem oni ketiv. It says the matzah is defined by the Torah as lechem oni, the bread of affliction, and that's how you remember it, by breaking it to show that they were slaves. They didn't perhaps have perfect, no level of perfection. They didn't have even whole bread, and that's really the reason that you have sometimes, the way we do it. The way regular halacha is, you have 3 matzot. Now you have, the tur already starting from the time of the Rishonim that they, represent Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, different elements, and so. But simple halachic reason for it is because you have 2 whole ones, which is lechem mishneh, which we're going to discuss right now in the Gemara, and then you say the hamotzi on those. All 3 of them you take in your hand. You say the bracha of hamotzi, and then the bracha of alachilat matzah. You drop the bottom one, and you say on those 2 to show that the bracha is going on the one that's not whole. Tosafot over here says that you don't want to say both of the brachot on one matzah because en osin mitzvot chavilot. Is this concept of not doing mitzvot in bunches and bunches. So you have 2 different matzot. You say one hamotzi, and the other one you say the bracha of alachilat matzah. That's how we do it. Again, the Bin Lagaon, his minhag was to actually just have 2, one whole one and one broken one. like a simple understanding of this Gemara would suggest. Says the Gemara. Amar Rab Abba said, "Ube Shabbat chayav adam lifsoa al shnei kikarot." On Shabbat you have to do shnei kikarot. My tama, why? Because lechem mishneh ktiv. Because the pasuk says that on Shabbat was lechem mishneh, vayhi b'yom hashishi laktu lechem mishneh. The first Friday when they gathered the man, they realized that it was twice as much as a regular day. It was shnei ha'omer. Instead of having omer, one omer was shnei ha'omer. Everyone was surprised. They came to Moshe and they told him, and he says, "Hu hadavar." This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, that on Shabbat you're not going to find it. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you double portion on Friday. So the Shabbat is also included. So to remember the ness of Man and the fact that Shabbat is a day that no work is done, everything is completely ready for you from before Shabbat. We do lechem mishneh, the double portion. We do also double portion. So it says the Gemara, therefore, you will have two breads representing every portion of man, with one of them to show that Shabbat comes with the double portion. It says the Gemara. My tama lechem mishneh ktiv amar Rashi chasira led Rav Kana the nakitartu basachata. I saw Rav Kana that he would hold both two breads, and then he would just do b'tziah on one of them. In other words, in the time of the bracha, it's not that you have to eat from both of them, but you have to have two of them to show this concept of lechem mishneh. Then you could just do b'tziah tapat to piece from one of them. Says the Gemara. Rab Zera hababasa akula sheruta. Rab Zera would have a large piece that would be sufficient for the entire duration of Suda. When he said Hamotzi, he would take a nice gesund large piece and put it next to him that would be sufficient for the whole Suda. Amar Ravina, Rav Ashi. Ravina says Rav Ashi, says, is that a correct conduct? Because it looks like Rav Tenuta, it looks like gluttony. It's something that you look at a person take a nice, half a challah for himself. It doesn't look proper, maybe. So he says to him, Rav Ashi answers Ravina. It says, correct, you have a point, but kevan dekol yoma lo kavid hachi. Every day he didn't do that. People knew that he would take a very small piece always. On Shabbat he would do it. It's the Chavot Shabbat. Nobody thinks otherwise because they see him during the course of the week not doing that, and therefore there's no worry. Only on Shabbat it doesn't look like being gluttonous. So says the Gemara. Rav Ami and Rav Asi, they had a minhag. Ki hava mitrami lehu rifta de eruva. When they would have the bread of eruv chatzerot in their home. Now, the halacha is if you have several different individuals living in around the same hatzer, in the same courtyard, in order for them to carry in the shared area in the middle, in the courtyard, they would get together, put some food together that would be eruv hatzerot, and then thereby it's like me and you, we live here, so we share some food to show that this is part of my living is in your home also. Part of everyone's living is in one of their homes, so they would put it in one of the homes of the chatzer. So whenever Ravina, Rav Ami and Rav Asi, whenever the portion of eruv chatzerot was put in their home, in other words, every week would be in a different home. So whenever it would end up in their home, they would actually do the hamotzi. They wouldn't just have it in the middle of the Suda, but they would say hamotzi on the pot of eruv. Why? Says the Gemara. This is a halachic concept over here. Rav Ami v'Rav Asi ki hava mitrami lehu rifta de eruva. Whenever they had the rifta, the pot of eruv chatzerot by their home, mevarchin aleha motzi lechem min haaretz. That is the bread that they would use for starting the Suda, for saying hamotzi on it. Why is that? Amri, they would say, ho'il ve'it'abit b'mitzvah chada, na'avit b'mitzvah chariti. Once one mitzvah has been done with this bread, the mitzvah of eruv, let it become also the object of another mitzvah, right? It's like a mitzvah goreret mitzvah. You did one mitzvah with it, you do another mitzvah with it as well. Now, this is the reason that you keep your lulav and hadasim and aravot to use it for biur chametz afterwards, because once a mitzvah was done with, you want to use it for another mitzvah, so you keep it for Pesach if you remember where it is, and sometimes 5 years later you find out your lulav from years ago and so on. But nevertheless, aside from all the segulas of shmira and so on, the reason we keep it, halachic reason, is you want to do another mitzvah with it. Now, this should really stand in contrast and create a question with what we just said 30 seconds ago. We just mentioned the Tosafot over here that say, don't say the bracha al achilat matzah on the same matzah that you say hamotzi on, because of another concept called ein osin mitzvot chavilot, that we don't do mitzvot in piles and piles. You want every mitzvah to have its own identity and time. So therefore, we don't do them in bunches like that, right? So where do you draw a line? On one hand, you tell me you don't want to do mitzvot chavilot, and therefore the matzah that you said the bracha on for hamotzi, you should not say the bracha of achilat matzah on it. Say it on the other one, and then right away afterwards, you tell me Rav Ami and Rav Asi would actually make sure to say the bracha of hamotzi on the same matzah that they used for the mitzvah of eruv. So what's the pshat? Pri Megadim asks this question. The Pri Megadim answer says the difference is if there is a chronological order and the mitzvot are not being done at the same time. It's not the same mitzvah. By Pesach night, you're saying hamotzi, right? It just happens to be that because it's mitzvah to eat matzah on Leil Pesach, on the same thing you're doing two brachot. Al achilat matzah, you don't say after the night of Pesach, in Chutz La'aretz 2 nights of Pesach. The mitzvah of eating matzah is only the first and second night of Pesach in Chutz La'aretz. In Eretz Yisrael, only the first night, because it says ba'erev tochlu matzot. The rest of Pesach, you don't have to eat matzah. You can eat chametz. If you want to have bread, you have to have the bread of affliction, the bread of the poor man, which is $50 a pound. Right? So that's the poor man's bread that you have to eat if you want to eat bread. But you don't have to eat anything. The first night you must eat matzah. So therefore, the two brachot that you're saying is really the same time. It's chronology of it is the same time. Therefore, it says the Tosafot, say one bracha on the whole matzah, say the other bracha on the other matzah, and you're going to be good to go. But by having the bread of eruv chatzerot, which already you did a mitzvah with it, it's gone, it's done. Now this has become an object of mitzvah, and the mitzvah is done. It's not at the same time. It's not chavilot. It's not bunches and bunches. There you have the concept of when you have an object of mitzvah, you try to do another mitzvah with it, right? And that's the basic reconciliation to the apparent stira that we have. This is what the Pri Megadim says. The Gemara.
Is there an issue with eating the pat of eruv chatzerot before the end of Shabbat? Like, isn't the whole point that it should be in someone's house and then it stays the entirety of Shabbat?
Right, but again, at the end of Shabbat, the Sudah Shlishi is for sure.
Oh, they're saying to eat it at the end, not on like Friday night.
Again, so this becomes a halachic question for Hilchot Eruvin of when you could eat it and so on. And this is one of those things that you have the Eruv, you don't want it to be gone before Shabbat. So you don't want to eat it before Shabbat and finish it. You need it to be there on Shabbat. But once Shabbat is there, that has done its job. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav. Now we go back to our good old 6th perek concept of brachot. So you say bracha. Normally speaking, when you say a bracha, you cannot talk afterwards, right? If you have a hefsek between the bracha and doing what the bracha represented, then invalidate your bracha. So if I said, let's say, oh, on an apple, and then I see my friend and I start delivering a shmooze with him, and then I never ate this. So can I eat it because I said the bracha? No. You lost the bracha because of the hefsek. So the Gemara says that there are exceptions to that rule. Amar Rav. Rav said, Tol beroch eno sarich levarech. If you said hamotzi, and before you ate, you tried to get the attention of the next guy and give him a piece of bread, say, take, here it is a piece of hamotzi for you, and you couldn't get his attention without talking, so you said, hey, here's a piece for you. So you talked, you haven't eaten yet. Do you have to say another bracha? Says Rav, no, you don't have to say another bracha. Because this is considered, you didn't do something right necessarily. Would have been much better to do it without talking, but Lemasa, you did something that's connected to the bracha that you said. You're not talking about the presidential election. You're talking about the bracha v'hamotzi. You said it for both of you. So you want to get his attention, so you give him a piece of bread. That is considered not a hefsek, but the But if you say, bring salt, bring a dip, that is considered already a hefsek.
Salt?
Yes. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with that. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, afilu haviu melach haviu liftan nami en sarich levarech. Rabbi Yochanan holds, even if you say bring salt or bring a dip, still don't need to say bracha. We're going to learn just momentarily why that is. And the third and final element over here is that Rabbi Yochanan himself says, but if you say givil l'turi, if you say go feed the cows, then it's considered unrelated. Salt and dip is related to my hamotzi because it's part and parcel of eating bread. As we're going to see, a bread that doesn't have salt is not considered a proper bread. So if you want to eat it with something that makes it a proper bread, is part of my bracha. But to say feed the animals, that is not part of my bracha, because what the shaykhut? What's the connection bichlal between me and the animals? So that's unrelated. If you said go feed the animals, then you have to say a new bracha, right? To which the Gemara says, even that is not simple. Rav Yehuda Amar, Rav Sheshet Amar, afilu givil leturi nami eno sarich levarech. Rav Sheshet says, even if you say feed the animal, you don't need to go say another bracha afterwards, because feeding the animal also has to do with you eating bread. How is it connected to me eating bread? The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, because Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Asur la'adam, and that's halacha. Asur la'adam sheyochal kodem sheiten ma'achal lebehemto. It's asur for you to eat before you feed your animals, right? Hashtag pet owners. Says the Gemara, Shenemar, v'natati esef v'satcha livhemtecha, v'hadar v'achalta v'samata. First, you have to give livhemtecha, and only afterwards is v'achalta v'samata. So you have to feed your animals first. So therefore, if you said hamotzi and then, oops, I forgot to feed my animals, it's asur for you to start suda before you feed it. So you tell your shamash, you tell your maid, you tell your kids, you tell someone that's there, go feed the animals, then you could start eating the suda. So therefore, it's very much connected with that. Now this becomes complicated because this is Rav Yudah in the name of Rav. Rav is the first one that said tol beroch is eno sarich levarech. So you see that Rav holds tol beroch is connected. Givil leturi is also connected, but saying bring salt and dip is not connected. Right? Rabbi Yochanan is the other way around. Rabbi Yochanan holds, if you say bring dip and salt is connected, saying bring food for animal, give food to animal, that's not connected. So what's Rabbi Yochanan here? Rabbi Yochanan holds there's no isur of eating before feeding your animals. He doesn't read the pasuk the same way. He doesn't learn the same thing from it. So it's machloket Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. And again, the halachic parameters of this will be for a different time. So says the Gemara. Amar Rava bar Shmuel mishum Rabbi Chia. We spoke about needing dip and salt for bread, and this is related to that. But Rava bar Shmuel says, in the name of Rabbi Chia, Eina botzea rashai lifsoa, at shaviu melach or liftan. When you're saying hamotzi, when you're eating bread, you are not allowed to eat the bread until you have melach, salt, or liftan, a dip. Lifnei kol echad ve'echad. Everyone has to have salt and dip in front of them, and only then you could say hamotzi. Right? So says the Gemara, Rava bar Shmuel himself, this is the one that said this. He was once invited to the Resh Galuta. He once was with the head of the Jewish exile. So this is something that you see from the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat. The Rosh actually says this in his Tshuvot in Klal Yud Chet, I believe it is, Siman Yud Zayin, says that every the Jewish community in exile, when they were in Babylonia, they had not just the king that was in charge of them, the in the time of the Gemara would be Romans, but they had local Jewish authority, mitam hamelech. It was local Jewish authority that was with permission of the king, that basically had a policing system. They had some power. Actually, they could enforce things and so on, as you see in the Gemara. And this was from Shevet Yehuda. They were not always the firmest of people. Sometimes the Resh Galuta was not the nicest person. And you see, sometimes Resh Galuta was a problem, actually. But nevertheless, many times they were good, upstanding Jewish individuals. And here actually is such case. You see that the household of Resh Galuta were Talmidei Chachamim. Because what happened was, this Rava bar Shmuel was invited there, and they put bread in front of him. So they brought no melach and no liftan. They wanted to test him. So Rava bar Shmuel holds that you're not allowed to say hamotzi until you bring salt and dips. So let's see what he does. So they brought bread in front of him, and without any weight, he said hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and he started eating. So they say, Hacham, what happened? You changed your mind? Says the Gemara, Afikule rifta, they brought bread for him, upasa lehedya. Immediately he said hamotzi, and he started eating. Amruleh, they said, wait a second, hadar mor mishmateh, you retrieved, you know, that's what happened exactly with your shita? Amar lehu, he said, no, let den sarich b'shash. These bread they don't need any weight. Why do we say that you have to have salt and dip? Because the bread that they had was just flour and water, and it was not a proper food by itself, so you needed salt. But this is fancy household. This is the Resh Galuta's household, and the bread already is so well done, and it has already the ingredients that it needs to, so it has no need for being dipped in salt or dipped in any other dip. You could just eat it right away. Says the Gemara, and that's halachically speaking, our bread already has, it's a considered proper bread and doesn't need necessarily halachically speaking, doesn't need any weight, but we do the salt already still because of Kabbalistic reasons that exist as well. So says the Gemara, once we spoke about Rava bar Shmuel and we said this halakha, we're going to bring another teaching of Rava bar Shmuel, which is completely unrelated. Right? Says the Gemara, Amar Rava bar Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Chia, Ein meraglaim kalin ela b'yeshiva. If you want to urinate and you want completely to empty your bladder, you have to not be standing, you should be sitting. It doesn't finish until you're sitting. Why is that? Not because of the physical positioning, but rather because when a person is standing, when it comes to the end, he's concerned to not dirty his shoes. We spoke about this before, that people would speak and think that he's a krut shofcha, that he has some problem, and his kids perhaps are not his kids, and also to not dirty his garments and so on. Therefore, the norm would be a person that does it standing, it would stop a little bit before it's finished. So it would not completely finish. But says the Gemara, if you have soft dirt, then even ba'amidah, because soft dirt does not splash, and therefore you can do it even ba'amidah. If you don't have afar tichoach, then you stand on a high place, and the urination is going to be going down below the surface of the ground that you are standing on. So therefore, even if there is a splash, it's not going to come back up on him or on his shoes. Therefore, it would be completely fine. Says the Gemara. Ve'amar, 2 dots. Ve'amar, Rava Bar Shmuel, another teaching of Rabbi Bar Shmuel is in the name of Rabbi. After all of your eatings, eat salt. And after eating, drinking all the drinks that you have some water. And you won't be harmed. You'll be healthy. You'll live a healthy lifestyle. Tanya Nami Hachim, we learned this in the Braita as well. It's not just Rabbi Bar Shmuel. We learned in Braita, second Braita. Drink water after everything and eat some salt after everything. And you'll be healthy. Tanya Idach, a third one. If you ate all types of food and you didn't have some salt, Shata kol mashkin, you drank all different drinks, and you didn't have water. During the day, you should be concerned about bad breath. And at night, you should be concerned about digestive problems. Askara, if you remember in Dafchet, earlier on in the Masechet, we mentioned that askara could actually turn into a very serious ailment, and it could actually kill a person. The Gemara said askara is the worst of all death. So it would start, Rashi over here says, will start as with constipation and stomach problems, and it would spread to become worse things. That's for the gastroenterologist in the crowd.
What does it mean to eat salt? Like just literally eat salt, or was it
not eat with a spoon, but it could be just a taste of salt. So it says the Gemara again, as we mentioned before, when you do have salt as part of the recipe of your
right.
food, that may be
sufficient?
Especially if you have iodized salt, which is one of the big things about salt that it creates those things that you do need for thyroid and so on and so forth. Again, this is the medical aspects of this are for the doctors and the crowd. So says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanan, if you drink sufficient amount of water after you eat, now this does not have to be immediately after you eat. The Rambam in his guidelines for health in Sefer Mada, he mentions that maybe a little wait and so on. But if you have sufficient water after every meal, to the degree that your food is floating, so to speak, in your stomach, it's not something solid that is sitting there without any liquids. It's floating in liquid in your stomach. You will never experience the problems of stomachs. It says the Gemara, what's the give us some recipe? What's exact amount? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chisda, kiton lepat. It doesn't really help us, but kiton is a small jar that they had in the time of the Gemara, and pat, they apparently had some standard size of loaves of bread of the bread that they had. So one kiton, one such small jug or jar of water for every loaf, every roll of bread is the amount that Rav Chisda mentions. Amar Rav Mari, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Mari said in the name of Rav Yochanan, if you have lentils, once in a month even, it gives you such healthy stomach and a healthy digestive system that you will never experience askara, because you will never have that beginning of askara that we mentioned. Aval kol yoma lo. It's not suggesting necessarily that you should have it every day. Because it does give you bad breath. If you have mustard once a month, once in 30 days, you are taking away all sicknesses from your home, or not all sicknesses, but many sicknesses from your household. But don't overdo it, because excess amount of it will be bad for your chulshat deliba. It's bad for weakening your heart. Okay. Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi, Amar Rav. Rav Chia bar Ashi said in the name of Rav, if you are accustomed to eating small fish, right? Fish that naturally are small, it's healthy for you. It takes away digestive problems. And not only that, it's also good for reproductive system, is marbezera, and therefore is a second dimension to the benefits as well. It gives health to all of your body. Amar Rav Chama, first wide line. Amar Rav Chama, Rabbi Chanina, haragil beketzach enoba. If you have ketzach, it's not so clear what ketzach is. It's fennel. Rashi says maybe some sort of vegetable that grows in Eretz Yishmael. You won't experience heart diseases and heart problems. So Gemara says, wait a second. We learned exactly the opposite. Metive, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, ketzach echad mishishim zamanei mavet. If you want to find poison in nature, one of the 60 poisons you find in nature would be ketzach. And not only that, hayashel mizrach krono, if you sleep in the east side of a storage of ketzach, damo berosho, you're responsible for your life. That's pretty strange, right? You could die basically. Why is that? Because the western wind would blow to it and bring the reach, the odor of this into your body, and that would be very dangerous, says the Gemara. So the Gemara says, lokash, it's not a problem. Eating it without the reach, if it's processed and you eat and you have the taste of it, it has in it elements that actually cure some issues in the person's body. But the not eating it, just smell the odor of it, could be actually dangerous. Says the Gemara. Again, it's not so clear. It's either fennel or it's some sort of grass vegetable that grows in Eretz Yishmael. Rashi says it's not so clear. Says the Gemara. One is with the smell, one is with the taste. Imet Rav Yirmiyah, the mother of Rav Yirmiyah, Rifta, she would bake bread for him, and she would take ketzach and stick it to the hot bread in order for it to absorb the tam, the taste of ketzach, and then she would peel it off afterwards, peel it off in order not to have the smell of it stick around. So that's how she would try to get the benefits of it without the danger. So says the one. Rav Yehuda Omer, Borei Minei Deshaim. We learned the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda disagreed with Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda held that you say Borei Minei Deshaim, not Borei Priya Adama, on the vegetables. Amar Rav Zera v'Itema Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Rav Zera said, or Rav Chanina bar Papa, en halakha Rabbi Yehuda. We knew this. Halakha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Zera v'Itema Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. My time of Rabbi Yehuda. What is the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Where does he get this concept that you have to say Borei Minei Deshaim on vegetables? Says the Gemara, because of the pasuk. The pasuk says, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom Yamos Lanu Hanishvatenu Sela. Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. Blessed be Hashem day and day. Says the Gemara, wait a second. First, very wide lines. Says, what up? In the day you bless him, at night you don't bless him. Is that what it means? Yom Yom, only days? Says no. What does it mean Yom Yom? That means every day is separate. It comes to teach you, Kol Yom v'Yom ten lo me'en brichotav. Every day and day give a separate bracha to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So just like every day deserves its own bracha, every type of food also should deserve its own bracha. So when you have categories of vegetables should have deserve their own bracha. Hachanami kol min v'min ten lo me'en brichotav. Here also every type and type should have their own bracha. Rabbi Zera said in the name of Rabbi Chinna bar Papa, another teaching from the name of Rabbi Chinna bar Papa. Hashem is not like people. Midat basar v'dam, by us, by people, kli rekan, in physical world, kli rekan machzik maleh, an empty vessel could fit things in it, but maleh eno machzik, if it's full, it does not fit anything more, right? It's physical capacity. If it's up to capacity, it doesn't fit anything more. But Hashem is not like this. If you're full, the fuller you are, the more you have capacity. The more spirituality you take in, the more appetite and thinking room you have for more spirituality. The emptier you are, the harder it is to fill it, because it doesn't fit. But when you start doing mitzvot, it's something that actually gives you more room and more appetite and more capacity of more spirituality. Shenemar, as it says, if you listen, you will listen. What does it mean? If you listen, you will listen. If you listen, then you have more room for more listening, for more spirituality. And if you don't, then lo tishma. It will be hard even to start if you have never done it. If you review the Gemarot that you've done already, if you listen to the old one, you do chazara, then tishma b'chadash, then you have more room and more capacity for learning new things. But if you don't do that, if you just defocus yourself from what you have already learned, then you lose your capacity to learn more. Bezrat Hashem will start the Mishnah in the days to come.
And therefore, we come to Amud Yomi every day.